I'm going to kick off the ball here, asking Stephen something. Donegal and myself, we run astronomy classes, and the first thing people come in, they say, "What's that telescope I'm going to get? What will I get? What will I do with it?" And I say to them, "You don't buy a telescope." You would agree with that?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Yeah. I get asked that all the time, like multiple times a day. Even away on holiday, you're getting messages in, and it starts off with absolutely zero info, looking for a telescope for husband, wife, partner, child, grandchild. And literally, and I'd never give this info to a car salesman ever. The first question back is, what's the budget? Because it's simply, that just narrows down a lot of it. Because a lot of the conversation you get, even if you didn't ask it, they'll go talking about, Schmidt Cassegrains and Max and all sorts. And then you ask them what the budget is and he goes, 300 quid. And I'm like, well, there's no point talking about them because they're all 700 quid. So the first thing that narrows it down, and that's what, it's a game of narrowing it down, is you narrow down by the budget. That leaves you with X amount of telescopes to pick from. And then you start asking more questions. What do you want to use it for? And who's using it? Sometimes is an important question as well. And then portability. So if you can play the three of them off each other, you'll eventually arrive at maybe an option or two of which either would be correct, or sometimes three of them, of which any one of them would be correct, depending on which way they want to lean or what they want to do. But generally, the main one is the budget and what you want to do with it. Like as in planetary or deep sky, or if you want to do astrophotography or not, or you're trying to future-proof people as much as possible, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
I was just wondering, you talk about the budget, which is fair enough, but like for like, there's also whether, I suppose, do they know, or can you?
The size.
Yeah, you can get all the telescope with those first couple of questions. So now what happens is a lot of people would say contact us thinking they're going to ask me loads of questions, and I end up asking them more. Because you're basically trying to, it's like someone buying a car, you're trying to qualify them. There's no point in looking at a 2-series sports car to family of 7, that kind of thing. So you're qualifying people all the time to try and get them the best purchase. And then with telescopes, like there's a lot of variables that keep moving around. So they'll never be the perfect purchase. So you're always, I try to future-proof it as much as possible, in as much as I can. Sometimes people want to get a telescope now. So say someone contacts me and goes, listen, popular budget, say €1,000. And I'm like, right, do you want to do astrophotography? And they might say, yeah. And you're like, planetary or deep sky? And you're hoping to God they say planetary. And they go deep sky. And you're like, right, we're going over here. So and then you're into like, right, do you want to get an equatorial mount now? And maybe a telescope that might do some astrophotography? Or do you want to just get the telescope that will really suit you right now? And in a year's time, we'll cross that bridge. So there's an element of kind of, some people will want it in one purchase, could be a retirement purchase or something like that. Some people might go, no, I only want to get into it, see if I'm still in it in 2 years, and then we'll talk about something else. So you might talk about the astrophotography again. But the core ball in any telescope purchase is astrophotography. Once they mention deep sky photography, you're eliminating almost 70% of your typical beginner sub $2,000 telescopes, because they're all on Alpaz mounts, with or without tracking, it doesn't really matter. And for deep sky, you need your equatorial. But oftentimes they do think that the whole aperture thing, well, obviously I spent from the age of 10 just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then the older I got, the telescopes went smaller and smaller and smaller. They think that you need a bigger telescope for astrophotography. So when you actually say to them, actually you'll find most of the guys out there, girls that are doing it, are probably using a 72mm or an 80mm refractor. Or, it's target dependent as well. But when they say to you, I want to take the pictures I can see on Facebook, it's typically Heart and Soul Nebula, Orion Nebula, North American, all that kind of stuff. And you need a wide field of view, short focal length, refractor type telescope. So that's usually the way you'd sort of push somebody, because tracking at 430mm or 450mm on an equatorial mount, without auto guiding or any of that getting complicated about it, it's much easier at that focal length than say a reduced 8-inch Schmidt Cassegrain or something like that. That's like 1300mm focal length. You're tracking your polar alignment that have to be bang on to get anything.
And is it true, if you want to photograph, or not just photograph, but observe planets, that refractors are better than reflectors?
Yeah.
I have heard
that's the common one. You'd often say in 20 conversations with people that are looking to buy a scope, be it the first or second or whatever, one of those 20 will buy a big refractor. And that would be particularly for somebody who wants the sharpest view they can get for the planets and the moon and that. and they have the budget to do it. Because if you're looking at buying a 6-inch refractor, it's going to have to go on a whopper amount. And the budget is like huge. So generally speaking, the other 19 people that are looking to do planetaries, they'll always go from a cost basis and a compactness basis and a portability basis. They'll nearly always go with a mat cast or a sheet cast. That's just the way they'll do it.
Would you recommend buying the mount first and then the telescope?
It depends. If you're just getting an all-in-one rig, so say, like I had a customer there when I was in Lanzarote in the airport, text me there going, I'm looking for a telescope, I've about €1,000 to spend. And I'm like, brilliant, let's go get through all the options. And the options that we arrived at were a 5-inch Schmidt Cassegrain on a Wi-Fi operated mount, Altal, a 4-inch, the Nexstar 4 SE, brilliant telescope. He could go with that at around that same price. Or he could go with the StarSense Explorer 5-inch SCT, which doesn't have any motor, setup time is less than 60 seconds. He uses an app to point toward the objects, they're a bit more fun. So I left him with 3 options and said, this is where, based on what you want to look at and who it's for, a complete beginner. He also said he didn't want something too complicated. So that almost eliminates any motor-driven go-to telescope, because typically it takes 5 or 6 minutes to set up. And at the honeymoon period, the first 6 months you own it, yeah, great, 5 or 6 minutes, that's grand. But you fast forward to next November, -5 degrees, you bring the telescope out, takes too long to set it up, and next thing, it's a closed horse in the corner, you know, and the odd time might get taken out. So you're always trying to also get a telescope that somebody's going to use. So if you're going for like that, the perfect planetary view, 6-inch, you know, triplet refractor, awesome. Very few people in the country probably have one.
Can I say, do you find are people more driven by Instagram photographs than they are about the science of astronomy?
Absolutely, 100%. Those that want to do any sort of photography, yeah. There are a lot of people, and this is the expectations thing is something that we manage. You have to manage a lot. With planets, it's not that bad. But with deep sky stuff, like, they, honest to God, they expect to look through a telescope and see the Orion Nebula in all its pink and awesomeness, and you're like, it's going to look like a fuzzy blob. And in that telescope, it's going to look like a bigger fuzzy blob. And they really, I mean, don't try to downplay it, but you do have to. Like, I always, there's the famous one, remember in COVID when we couldn't get any telescopes? None to be had. And there was a guy had, and I remember this, and I recite the story to a lot of people, he had 800 quid to spend. And he wanted the best view of Jupiter, in particular, that he could get for 800 quid. And I'm like, right, Skymax 127, 5-inch Mac cast on a Wi-Fi operated Altaz mount. Nice and compact, that's about the best view you're going to get for that money. So we waited for like 4 months. And when the telescope did arrive in, I remember this, it was one of the first days you were back in the office, he collected it. And he rang me the next day and he goes, can I return it? And I'm like, have you used it? And he's like, yeah. I said, well, then we'll have to chat because I can't sell that as new. Because you know when you do your distance selling thing, they have to return it to you as original so that I can literally just open the box and go, you haven't set fire to it and put it back on the shelf. So we used it, so there were marks all over the dovetail and everything. And I said, what's the problem? And he drove over to the office and he said, there's pictures in the office that I had that John McKeown did of Jupiter. It's had the whole solar system in an array, right? I swapped it for a tripod one of the days. And he looked at this picture and goes, honest to God, Jupiter was about that big on the picture. And he goes, thought it looked like that. And I'm like, I said, there's no telescope I can sell you that'll have it look like that. I said, you might get half the size with 2 bands, maybe a bit of north and south cloud. You'll see the great red spot, obviously. I said, look, at 800 quid, what you got is the best you can do. And he bought a 7 Alive piece to go with as well, so he was maxed out. Like. And it was just that, it's the expectation thing. He, honest to God, thought that he'd see Jupiter like it looks in 2001, I think was what he was aiming for. And I put the telescope back, I think I knocked 50 quid off his refund or something like that, and basically just sold it then as a B stock, you know, 100 quid off type thing. It doesn't happen often. I'd say in 15 years we've been in business, I've had maybe 3 people return a telescope that they didn't think did the job they wanted it to do. Because a lot of the time when I do talk to them, I do say, you know, don't expect like what you see, especially now with Instagram, Facebook and all. We scroll through Facebook and it's the same 15 targets. You come across Marcy and Marty there doing like the other stuff that I'd appreciate looking at, or Sarah does a lot of the good stuff as well. But you don't typically see that on, say, my feed scrolling through. You just don't see it.
I just like, I need them, well, not any of them, but I'm also just not interested in this in the science of astronomy? Is this a,
Yeah, it's not the same way that, say, I would have got into it. Like, I got into it when I was 10, when we moved from Ballymoon to Swords, and Swords was the 6 dark skies, and I remember walking down to the field beside my mum's house, looking up and going, mega. Out comes the directory, Dunsink Observatory, rang them, got tickets to go to an open night, looked at Jupiter through that refractor, and it transformed me forever. Until now, like, completely. And it was the science of it all. It was absorbing all the books down to Ballymoon Library, Sword Library, just taking out every book they had, reading them all. That doesn't seem to be, you do get the odd person who come in, like Aidan there, young lad, man into it, knows all the science stuff as well, and the backgrounds and all the intricacies of it. But a lot of people, honest to God, they'd be scrolling through Facebook and they'll go, fancy a scope to get your Emmett moving, and I'm like, right, that's sorry. So the into astronomy, another question that I do ask is it a general interest, or is it someone who's been into astronomy for a while? So if someone in the house has 30 astronomy books and they're yakking on about astronomy all the time, you kind of might go a different route with a telescope compared to somebody who said, sure, we have a telescope and you might get a checkbook and go, so, you go different ways, because the person that's looking for the instant hit, honest to God, it's probably 5, 6 or 8 inch category. You can't really beat it. You can throw a photo reducer on it when you want to look at the deep sky stuff. So it's a catch-all, kind of, in as much as you can catch as much as possible with a telescope. So again, that's down to budget. You get a 5 inch if you're sub 1,000, you get a 6 inch if you're just above, and you get the 8 inch if you're near 2.
So there are those interested in the science of it and those who like the pretty pictures.
Yeah, that was definitely you get a few that are still interested in the science end of it, but see, I wouldn't really hear a lot of that. But when I do ask general interest, they're generally bought for someone in the house. The person in the house that has been, I'd love to get a telescope. They never pick up the phone. It's someone else goes, your birthday, sure, get that. And that's where you're not even talking to the person who it's for. You're asking the other half going, and what are they be talking about? Are they talking about galaxies? Is it star clusters? Is it planets? Oh, they never mentioned galaxies. Right, let's go that way. Or they've mentioned all about the galaxies. And that's where you hear a little bit of, if they're genuinely into deeper space, they will say, oh yeah, they're always watching, like, Brian Cox, or they're talking about Einstein waves and all this, not like that, deep sky, yeah. The planetary people tend not to have as much a deep interest as the deep sky. And you do get that split, like even say myself, like I've been into it for God knows how many years. I'm deep sky. Looking at my eyepiece kit and all the gear that I have, that this guy looks at the planets twice a year, which is the God honest truth. At the moment, I'm grounds with them all up there and looking at them a bit more. Generally speaking, like I've seen Mercury twice, ever. And that's in like 39 years looking twice in a telescope. All the other ones I've seen plenty of. I've seen Pluto once, I think, if it was it's shown,
I've seen it once as well.
Yeah.
I think it was.
Generally speaking, like if I'm out for a night observing, and I've moved lately from the astrophotography end back to observing, partly because Michael Murphy has me camera and some lad like Carlo has me mount. When you're back observing, if they're out where I observe in the house, like I'm a bit patchy with sky that I can see. If Jupiter's there, I'll go up and I'll say hello. I'll just go, yeah. But then I'll go off DVT, or Saturn is there, or Mars is there. But typically, like Mars and awfully, you get people going like, show me what telescope does Mars the best. And I'm like, Mars is like, even a big telescope, it's tiny and
every 2 years as well.
Yeah, and then even though it's closest, then like there's a little bit of mottling, you might see a bit of white if you have a telescope big enough. So yeah, there's a lot of qualifying people for trying to get them the best purchase, and the hope that they don't ring you up going, what did you sell? Or you have the expectation thing like the other fella. Yeah.
But with me personally, I really like going out looking for something, maybe spending 2-3 hours to look for it.
Yeah.
And if I find it, that's a plus.
Oh yeah.
If I find a crab nebula or something like that, I'm laughing.
Yeah. But famously, Vicky will say to me when I'm going out, if I hear any shouting or screaming, you're coming back in. That's what she'll hear. It'll be 20 minutes scanning the sky with lineage stuff or something, looking for a particular cluster of galaxies or a star cluster or something. And once I start shouting, like she's like, oh, I'm making a cup of tea, come in for a minute. Because it's infuriating when you know you're in the right area and say it could be some, like you're at the limit of the telescope anyway, and there's a tiny bit of like wispy high cloud. That's it, game over. You're never going to find it. You could be looking well at it, and you're never going to see it.
And so, many telescopes are still in the box since Christmas, because of the weather.
Yeah. We shut the shop there in December because the new offices that the building built are just too small. I tried to work out of them for the month of December, but it just doesn't work. And the big offices that we were in, they demolished them. So I'm kind of stuck. But when you did have people coming in or talking to you, they'd be like, in May, yeah, I haven't even used that telescope yet. And a lot of people coming in, you get a general sense of, when you have astronomers coming into you, especially like the likes of yourself that are in clubs or people that you know from 40 or 50% people going, it's really bad, isn't it? You kind of get a sense that it's definitely worse than it used to be.
No, definitely.
Definitely. Bar those 5 weeks after lockdown, I think it's the worst it's ever been. For whatever reason, be it, climate change or different weather systems or what jet stream is doing with us. You get far less. You can tell because when you start up in a go-to telescope, especially one of the hand controller ones, it gives you the date you were last using it. So you fire it up and it's like, oh, over. So a lot of the time I'll be out with a manual scope like the Dove, so I do be out observing between it. But when you do fire up and say it just needs to going for looking at the planets or whatever, and you look at it and you go, oh God. Or a customer brings in a telescope and goes, yeah, I don't really know how to use this in like 2022. When did you last try? Like, it's not, a lot of them do in boxes for a long time. To do with the clouds and also to do with, they're afraid of them. They think they're horribly complex things to use, and they actually think that there's levels of complexity where there isn't. It's either manual or it's go-to, and if it's go-to, you have to do a 2 or 3 star alignment. I can't make it any easier. That's it, unless you buy a Star Sense Explorer or some other mad celestial accessory.
And I think what puts a lot of people off as well is they go into Google something and it says you have to call a major or something, and they say, what's that? No, how do I do that? It's quite simple when you do it.
It is, yeah.
When you do it once or twice.
And I do say that, when you do say to someone, now this one's a reflector, oh, do I have to call a major? It's like, yeah, you will, but it's really easy. I'll show you. I'll come out and show you, or I'll do a video with you on WhatsApp, or previously come into the office. I'll show you how to do it on 2 or 3 different reflectors. But yeah, the fear putting screwdrivers near anything optical and altering what it does is, like, I've had people bring in telescopes with the mirrors hanging out of them because they've gone to do it. And, I was looking at
Do you get people coming in and say, well, they have them around, they have a telescope around in the supermarket with 50.
This is where, and I've kind of been obviously in the business like 15 odd years now, I've become more brave in kind of my own beliefs with telescopes. And the God honest truth is, you do get people onto you going, I'm looking for a telescope for an 8-year-old, which is brilliant, 8-year-old, awesome. What can I get them for 100 quid? And I'm like, a tabletop 76 mil, the Skywatch.
Yeah.
That's it. Can I not get a tripod mounted one? I said, don't buy a tripod mounted one for less than 200 quid. And you'll then say to them, like, believe it or not, Celestron, world-renowned company, the minimum Celestron I do is an Astromaster, which is actually the 3rd range up. There's the Power Seekers and the Explorer scopes below that honestly I wouldn't play football with. Honest to God. I've been to a factory over in the UK where they have everything on display, and I've actually walked with the sales guy up the line of telescopes. They start with the smallest and they go all up to 14 inch, and they're all in a line, and it's brilliant. And I'm like, a third of the way down the line before I stop and go, that's my minimum starting point. And I'm like, what's wrong with all of that? I was like, built to a budget, I'm a bit principled, and that's the God honest truth. I will not sell a telescope that I think is wobbly, doesn't do the job or whatever, because all it's going to do is kill, the hobby killers that we've all had over the years. But yeah, we do get people coming in saying, oh, the toy shop has this, or somewhere has, the famous one is Lidl would bring in the 70mm presser. Perfect on the Alpaz mount. Does the job brilliant. But God, you buy it on the EQ mount, that's it. It's going into the attic in about 2 weeks. You sell an EQ mount to anybody that's a beginner, especially a sub 400 quid one. You'll go onto my website, you'll find that there's 2 available to buy, but they're out of stock all the time. And I'll only sell them if you answer these questions correctly and you fill in this form and you sign this because they're notoriously difficult for people to use, and it's the most dragged in telescope I ever had in the shop. I had the shop for 5 years. I still have 3 customers, 130 EQ Astromaster sitting on shelves where they brought them in to be shown how to use them. And I had to do a job or 2 on them, and they just never rang. Just the EQ mounts are incredibly complex, and that's the first thing if you go into a lot of shops. I'm not going to name anybody, but anyone else that sells telescopes in the country, they'll probably sell you an equatorial 130. And then in 2 years' time, someone will inherit it from a box and go, "Should we have that telescope crowd there? Get them to have a look at it," and they bring in these jokes, and I'm like, there was someone in there at Christmas. Actually, it came after Christmas. It was a 114 EQ they had. And I just looked at it and I went, where'd you get this? And they're like, got it on Amazon. And I'm like, send it back. I said, this is all assembled wrong. That's loose. And I assembled it as best I could. And I said, look.
You never get the shape out of it.
So I ended up putting that one away into the boot of the car and bought a StarSense Explorer 70, which is like 220 quid, and used an app to tell the young lad where to find the telescope. And they rang me up a couple of weeks later and said, wow, he hasn't been out more often than trying to get the other thing, ever. He's out all the time, because we have the same telescope at home. Like, I'm sure a lot of you know, all my kids are under 13. But Calvin, since he was 10, has been able to use a StarSense Explorer with my phone. He now has a own phone, and he goes out and just does his own thing. You know, just when you set it up the first time, it takes a minute. Any other time after that, as long as it's the same phone, about 30 seconds. And it tells you where to find stuff. It's almost gamified finding stuff, which is a game changer when you're under 14 and have zero patience, you know.
What about binoculars?
Yeah, binoculars are brilliant, but not something I normally recommend for a beginner. You see a lot of people going, get yourself a pair of binoculars, but get them in conjunction with something that gets you a bit closer. Because if you send someone to buy a pair of 7x50, 10x50, 12x50 binoculars, or even 12x60, which will be just about hand holding before you get to the big stuff, they nearly always go, I got a pair of binoculars, and it might be the ones that they got the Bresser ones in Lidl for 20 quid. Brilliant. They look at the moon and go, still far away. The only solution is a telescope. So if somebody's beginning and they want to see stuff, which they generally do up close, I'd recommend getting a telescope. But there is sometimes when they do get on, and it's specifically they'll ask, I just want to look up at the sky in general and put it in the boot of the car. Oh my God, 10x50 binoculars.
Well, some nice clusters you can see.
Yeah, like I use them for cruising around the Milky Way. I have a set of 12x50, 15x70, and 20x80. And oftentimes the 20x80s, I wouldn't even put them on a tripod. I lie on the decking at home, jam them into my eye socket and just go. As long as I can hold things up, away I go. But binoculars are brilliant for that rich field. Generally just pick it off and say, what are you looking at? So I'm lying on the decking. Oh, just stuff. So like nothing in particular. Nah, just stuff. You know, and that's it, same stuff.
It's a nice way to watch an eclipse or something like that.
Yeah, they're looking for that kind of thing. But for any sort of, if you're looking to get any sort of detail, you need magnification. And that only comes with a telescope. But you'll generally find that a lot of people, once they're a year or two into the hobby, guaranteed have a pair of binoculars as well. Because even if you have your 8-inch dog sitting there or your tracking one, you'll oftentimes just grab a pair of 12x50s just to look up, just to ascertain what's where, especially if you're a beginner. Is our tourist over that way, or is it over that way, or cruise around?
You know, these asteroids are going to hit us.
Just going back to mounts, read I don't know whether it's still the case, but if you're tracking and doing astrophotography, that the equatorial mounts were better for tracking. Is
For
that
deep
true?
sky, where you need them for deep sky, but for planetary you can get away with an Altab mount. Once, because with your planetary you're doing video, and once the thing actually tracks, that's fine. Whereas you need equatorial tracking for the deep sky stuff, because you're opening a camera shutter for a period of time. So it becomes very critical to have the tracking as perfect as you can. And in amongst that, if you have an equatorial mount, obviously the more accurate the polar alignment is, the better as well. That's why you moved on to just kind of a couple of levels. There's your general polar alignment, get a bit of astrophotography done, and then there's your auto guiding, which uses another telescope and camera to tell the mount how to track more accurately, which enables you to open the shutter for longer.
I remember when the go-to, I was into astronomy and then I left it, but when I came back into the go-tos were all to go, and people were saying, oh no, they will the hobby and things. But now with the smart telescopes, how are they going?
Yeah, I tried to get my hand on it. This sounds stupid for someone who sells these things, but they came out last year, the Sea Stars, and there was a couple out before that that are a bit more expensive, like the Vespera and stuff. When we got our push shipments in, I put one aside and go, oh yeah, that's mine. And then the 11 of them that I got to sell out, and then someone would ring me going, oh, do you have any of them? And I'm like, go on, I'll pick one. And this went on for a year until November. We finally got enough of them that for more than 2 weeks there was like 6 of them sitting there. And I was like, great, this is mine for Christmas. So I finally got around to using them at Christmas. And for someone who loves observing, right, and loved the night sky and all the things to do, like, we were well lands already there, but the first time I actually noticed Canopus.
Did you have it with you?
No, I didn't pack it in because we yeah, 4 kids in it. I actually packed up the 20 kilo luggage and I was like, I'll get that in there. And There was no chance. No. And then we'll book another bar down, and I thought, you know what, I'll probably bring it and not get a chance to use it. And it turns out that with where we were, although it was grand, we were at the end of the island in Playa Blanca. It was brilliant up like though. Probably wouldn't have gotten to use it at all, really. But we were walking along, I was like, this kind of it's deadly. So got the young lad's phone because it started mine. Started taking a few pictures to see if I could get it, which I did. But just, and there's me warbling about it all the way home to me wife, who's probably no interest in it whatsoever. Going, yeah, that's the second brightest star in the sky, just the brightest and the second brightest star. And she's just like, yeah. But to me, it was deadly. You know, that kind of, it reminded me of what it was like when you get into it in the first place, seeing something new. And I went down to Stellarium there trying to see what other stuff was, you know, south of running in that area around that city. So that joy is all still there. With this, what it does is it sort of takes away that, and Marty would probably agree here, the shouting and screaming phase of trying to fuck everything up. It's never end. Like, it sounds really easy, like if someone gets on you and says, yeah, and you move away from observing, which is simple, to do astrophotography. And next thing you have your telescope, your camera, probably a laptop or a tablet of some sort. And in the kitchen it all connects up perfect and works brilliant. You transport it outside and next thing this doesn't talk to that and the driver for that doesn't work anymore and you're like, mother of God. I had that thing and I said it to Vicky. I said, watch this. I said, I'm going to be taking a picture of something within 2 minutes. And she just laughed. No chance. Not with the stuff you do. Not a chance. So I set it up in the kitchen, connected it, brought it outside, made sure to carry my phone with me so I stayed connected, handed the phone in the window, but I was still connected and said, right, watch this. And I think it was the Seven Sisters I went for. It was full target. So in Seven Sisters, up we go, and me being an idiot that I am, 30-second shots and rather than the 10-second. So I kept dropping frames. But after about 2 minutes, I'm like, see, there. And she actually went, wow. But it's video. And I said, yeah. So 20 minutes later, I'm like, yeah, look at that. And she's like, oh yeah, that's a bit of a game changer, isn't it? Just real nonchalant like game. And it is. It'll get you shots of stuff that will probably get better with the gear that we have, but you'll get it quicker. And it's a real, do you know the way they talk about the kids and the whole dopamine? Oh, the kids. There it is right there.
I took it to Gran Canaria there last year because you could, but the great thing about it was because there's a whole section of the sky you don't normally get to see. There's a few targets you want to do. You could set that up and let it go about its business. Then you can go and enjoy the sky, knowing that that's doing the job of getting the stuff. And,
it really is like if you're, and I think I've spoken to you about this before. Over the course of the year of this particular thing being for sale, you have 3 distinct customers, right? You have the people who don't know any different and they're like, oh yeah, this looks deadly, show the kids, and that's perfect. Or school teachers often get them for showing kids if they're doing solar or something like that. Brilliant. That's great. You get the people of which have a number of customers that have sold a telescope that they didn't get on with, which in some cases was 3 different telescopes that they never got on with, all gone, and they use one of them. And then you have the people say like me, or I don't know whether Marty has one yet, the astrophotographers who are like, give us a look at it. Oh yeah, that's grand. I still won't do what I can do. But if you take the frames out of it, the individual frames, you just basically have a 50mm triplet taking shots. And you can watch it from. Yeah, do all that stuff over there. So it'll, with the time, probably that you having proper astrophotography rate, you will get near enough the same results. But I'd say 99% of the people that use it don't need an export the images out of the C-Star app. It's just a quick hit. It's like, oh yeah, Seven Sisters, and then they go to the next thing. Oh crap, now you go, what's unusual? Oh yeah, the wild duck cluster, give it a go. And that's what it does. That's what it's done.
But what I love about it is that, and you notice that I'm passionate about them, is that you light pollution in Dublin, they overcome a certain amount of it.
Yeah, they do.
Plus, you know, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
And as I say, I could spend 2 hours, 3 hours on my other telescope. With that little fella, you're out there 10 minutes and you're looking. It's like,
in fact, you can
does everybody want to buy a big telescope?
in fact, you can hook it up to multiple phones because I do some outreach work and get the kids, and you can have, you know, quite a number of them. They're all, you know, it's going to be shared experience.
I think for astronomy clubs or anybody that does any sort of observing.
Well, you can only get one with the C-Star, with the other one
with the
Stellarium.
Yeah, with the Stellarium. Yeah.
No, they're a game changer, I reckon.
Yeah. They'll drag a lot more people into astronomy that would never gotten into it in the first place, and that's great.
And they'll get into photography as well.
Yeah.
But the only thing is, they're ruining it as well because they're taking the images and they're processing them.
Yeah, no.
And you go out with your little lad out there and you're out there for, you can leave it out there for an hour or two and away it goes, and then you come in, my picture isn't as good as their picture.
Yeah, well, I'll be, again, that kind of principle thing about what you do and what you don't do. I won't take the frames from it onto the laptop. I downloaded Lightroom, the free Lightroom, and I went, right, 60 seconds, slide, yeah, that looks better, done. That's it. I won't give it any more than that. So any picture you see me putting up in that Irish Sea Star route that I put set up, or any that I put up on Facebook, it's a maximum of 60, and I don't revisit them. It's like 60 seconds, that's as good as I can do, cool, gone. That's it. Yeah, I refuse to do anything more, simply because I don't think anybody else will. So what's the point in dragging out every bit of data that's there over the course of like 2 hours of processing? Because I didn't buy it for 2 hours of processing, I bought it for the crap. You know, and that's what you do, buy it for a bit of fun. But I have had, then you have the conspiracy theorists yet. The
pictures are unreal, is it? That they actually don't be generated.
I have an email on my laptop. I still have it. And it was from a guy who said, sure, that's just pulling the picture off the internet. And I was like, is it? And he was like, yeah, it's just, you're choosing the target and it's going, yeah, there's a 30-minute one there, throw that in. There's a 40-minute. And I'm like, well, how do you explain the leaves on the trees in front of the moon, the leaves in my driveway? They superimpose that onto the picture. I mean, honest to God, there is a cover, isn't there?
It is.
Thanks, Steve, and unfortunately, is anybody, any questions to ask Stephen, or is anybody on the?
I was looking there now, people are just complimentary of the whole thing, saying we needed a talk like this.
So, I want to thank you very much. We leave Stephen at that